Hello and welcome. So after the 4 games of the quarterfinals, we finally have our semi-finalists for the ICC World Cup 2015 as well. The quarterfinals went on expected lines, especially if you saw my last video. South Africa completely outplayed Sri Lanka. It was a bit of an anticlimactic game. Most of us were expecting it to be much closer. But it was evidence of some really high quality fast bowling in the first 15 to 20 overs that completely swung the match away. And it was a game won by South Africa's bowlers, not so much by pace or bounce, but simply by the intent and the line and lengths that they bowled. Evidence of which was that even a world class batsman like Kumar Sangakkara was struggling on the wicket, took so many balls to get off the mark, and was trying desperately to hold the innings together, but eventually it did not really come about for Sri Lanka. It was a bit of a tame end to what promised to be a fairly competitive game. The second quarter final, India were in a spot of bother. Bangladesh played some really spirited cricket. They had their moments in the game. I think it was a sense of inexperience of the big stage that they kind of let the initiative away somewhere in the early 30th over when the captain brought himself back, when Suresh Raina was still new to the crease. Probably if the fast bowlers, either Taskin or Rubal Hussain had ball, got Raina out early, India would have been in a much bigger spot of bother. Two things stood out for me from that game. The first was this was a great tournament for Bangladesh. I think given some of their track record in the previous World Cup tournaments, this was a much improved performance, and they should take a lot of heart out of this. They have a good core set of players that can help them be a little more consistent in international cricket. And if they can achieve these kind of competitive performances, or even the results that they got against England more consistently, then they'll be on a good upward trajectory in world cricket. And the second thing that stood out was Rohit Sharma. Now, a lot of us have lampooned him on social media, made jokes about him. People used to call him no-hit. The word talent is almost like an albatross around his neck every time he goes out to bat in the crease. But if you ask me, this was probably his best innings in one-day cricket that I've seen so far. I know he's made 2 double centuries, but this was by far very important. I thought temperament won over talent for Rohit on this day. There was a period for close to about 15 to 20 overs where India was stuck. They were not scoring a lot of runs. Run making was slow, and the old version of Rohit would have tried to hit out and maybe hit a ball in the air and would have definitely caught on those big outfields in Melbourne. But he didn't do it this time. He bided his time. He was playing the long game, and by the time he actually opened his shoulders in the slog overs, he really made it count and made sure that India had a total that Bangladesh could not chase. We don't know which side of the bed Rohit Sharma is going to wake up on for the semi-final, but this was really a very crucial innings. Australia-Pakistan lived up to its billing. I thought Pakistan did themselves a bit of an injustice. They won the toss on a good pitch, didn't really put enough runs on the board, and when they look back on this game, they'll realize that had they got maybe 275, they had a really good chance with the way they bowled, which was always their strong suit. That spell from Wahab Riaz is probably one of the most fearsome spells of fast bowling you would see. He was unlucky to end up with figures of 9 overs for 54 and just 2 wickets. But then Pakistan, they let themselves down with some shoddy fielding. Catching was not good. And I think when they look back at this tournament, and then they look back to what happened in 2011 when they dropped Sachin Tendulkar 4 or 5 times, the history of knockout exits in World Cups is just a series of lost opportunities. It's not so much that they get outplayed, but the fact that they tend to shoot themselves in the foot. This was a good performance, but it was a rearguard action which could have been much more for Pakistan. Well, talking about dropped catches, Marlon Samuels dropped Martin Guptill on 4 in the early overs of the last quarter final, and he went on to make more than 200 runs. Making a double hundred in one-day cricket is becoming more frequent, but to do it on a World Cup stage in a knockout game was really a sensational performance, and this was a big, bold statement from New Zealand, and it kind of fits in all the puzzles in their batting lineup, and now they're really in a good shape to go into the semis. Let's take a few seconds to speak about the semi-finals. New Zealand take on South Africa in Auckland. So they're back to where they were in 1992, playing at Eden Park in front of a packed home ground. This is going to be a big game for them, and they've been semi-finalists 7 times and never made it to the final. they'll definitely want to go a step further. This is a very talented team. They're batting well, they're bowling well, they've got a very good spinner, and obviously they're great fielders. And if you look at the other side, South Africa are pretty much similar. Good batting lineup, good pace bowling, a spinner who's bowling well, very evenly matched. And so it really depends on the given day. The individual X factor might just come out and swing this game. How well does Brendan McCullum play? What does AB bring to the table? Can Dale stay in ball a really fast and tight spell? This is a tough game to call. New Zealand will have partisan support. They're playing well. They're really competitive. South Africa have had the upper hand over them recently, but this is a fresh start. I'm going to stick my neck out. A lot of people are saying that this is New Zealand's time. I think that this is a good chance for South Africa to upset them. If they're not chasing 250 plus, I back South Africa to win this one. Otherwise, I think if they're chasing, then this might just be a little difficult for them. India play Australia in another high stakes semi-final. Both the semi-final games are worthy of being semi-finals in a knockout World Cup tournament, and this is going to be an interesting game as well. I think it's going to come down to how well can India bat against some really tight and probing bowling from Australia. It's going to be on the SCG, the pitch slightly on the lower side, so if India can weather the early overs the way they did against Bangladesh and set themselves up, they'll probably back themselves to get a good total. I think the toss is going to be important. It'll be difficult for India to chase well against the Australian batting lineup, especially if they're chasing a big score. Australia probably have more depth and more variety in that lineup than India. It's going to be a cracker of a game. My heart says India should win, but I think my head is leaning more towards Australia. They're looking at like a better machine, and I've ticked off more check boxes. It's going to be a competitive game between two really good sides who are on a roll, but I think Australia are going to come out on top at the end of this. So that's it. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll join you again before the final. Enjoy the semi-final games. Hopefully they'll both be very competitive and very close. Goodbye.